The stock market had an amazing week last week as a bunch of stocks blasted to the upside. In this video, we have some big news on gun control and Russian gold. So stick with us today. We have some pretty solid plays for this week. But Tom, Smith & Wesson is blasting up by 15%. Stocks across the board are breaking out. What are you seeing for this week?
Yeah, like you said, Smith & Wesson's really breaking out this week. This was a big stock last week. They had earnings actually, and the day after was really shooting up. There was some gun legislation that came out pretty much all throughout the week. There's been talks of gun control laws passing over the past few months in general, as there's been a few different shootings and stuff like that going on. As we know, whenever those types of events happen, usually people like to flock to the stores and buy up guns as soon as possible. And we can see Smith & Wesson stock has taken a big boost here. I don't know if it was the earnings necessarily. In my opinion, it was more of these bills passing that is helping these stocks go up. I know the Supreme Court actually also struck down a law that was in place in New York that kind of restricted some concealed carry stuff. And when that passed, this stock really started blasting. So it was up 14% on Friday, Mike. That was a huge day in general. Like you said, lots of other stocks were up too, but this one has been the highlight. We've been talking about this one for the past couple of weeks, and it's really nice to see it finally flying up. I'm a little bit upset, Mike. I didn't grab enough of a long-term position down here in the beginning yet, so I'm a little bit upset it kind of blasted up too early on me, but hey, I'll take the movement. It's up 14%, and we've even caught some awesome day trades with this one.
Tom, zoom out on that daily chart. Smith & Wesson is a stock where when it doesn't really have any hype with it, it just does nothing. But like it goes in these massive, massive uptrends, as we can see on the chart. You know, it'll just go in these phases for weeks or months where it just blasts up in a major way. And right now it's starting to move with a lot of momentum. So I definitely think this is one worth keeping on your radar. They also pay a decent dividend. So keep it on your radar. And then Tom, can you tell us more about the news related to, guns right now?
Yeah, so obviously Smith & Wesson's blasting up last week with some gun control laws and just pretty much Congress talking about it in general. But Biden actually signed a gun safety bill into law on Saturday and takes a swipe at the Supreme Court. So last week, the Supreme Court struck down that New York law, like I said, kind of going after concealed carry, and that helped Smith & Wesson kind of fly up. But over the weekend, Biden signed a law into place that is pretty much going to restrict, I guess you could say, gun purchases from people who aren't supposed to have them. So pretty much right now what this is going to do is it's going to look to block gun sales to those convicted of abusing unmarried intimate partners and cracks down on gun sales to purchasers who are convicted of domestic violence. So obviously, if you're committing domestic violence or unmarried or, obviously abusing unmarried intimate partners, you're going to have some issues. And of course, you probably shouldn't be, having a lot of guns and stuff like that. And it's also going to provide funding to administer red flag laws, which some people find controversial, but sometimes they can be useful if people are kind of crazy. As we know, there's been some crazy stuff going on over the past couple of years with some of these guys and getting guns and stuff like that. So I don't know. We'll have to see how this ends up affecting Smith & Wesson, Mike. But as we know, if it's going to potentially crack down on gun sale purchases, who knows? Maybe people who have done domestic violence or something will run to the stores and try to buy up guns. In general, it's just not good. It's more gun control. And like we said earlier, Mike, some people, they really like to go to the stores and start buying stuff up whenever you start to hear of more gun control laws being passed. And right now, there's still even more laws circulating through Congress that we might be talking about even more over the next couple months.
Yep. All righty. And then, Tom, I also know there's some news with Russian gold. Gold prices have been pretty stagnant. What's going on?
Yeah, this is pretty big, actually. So G7 nations are going to announce an import ban on Russian gold. And Biden got on Twitter this morning to actually kind of confirm this. So what he actually said was, together, the G7 will announce that we will ban the import of Russian gold, a major export that rakes in tens of billions of dollars for Russia. So obviously, if gold exports do rake in tens of billions of dollars for Russia, this could potentially hurt some of their war efforts. Now, as we know, a lot of people have talked about doing import bans on Russia for other things like fertilizers. Some countries have talked about doing it for crude oil and lots of other stuff. So it's kind of good to see that they will be following through with this. At least that's what Joe Biden confirmed this morning. So good to see that. There's the exact Twitter post right there if you guys are interested. But going and looking at gold itself, Mike, if we go look at GLD here, it's at $170 right now. You guys can look at /GC if you want to see gold futures, which will open up tonight. So keep that in mind. And who knows, Mike, maybe they'll start to get a boost to the upside here with this news. I'm not sure which way that this news will make gold end up going, but it's definitely going to cause some volatility, I'm sure.
I would think to the upside, but gold again is a commodity that is used for many different purposes, especially like in the trading world. Most of the time it's just used as like a hedge against inflation. You're normally not going to see like giant returns just from investing into gold. All commodities are volatile. I would think that this news would make it pop up because there's less supply of gold. But we'll see what happens. GLD, in my opinion, is at a decent level. And like I said, it's mainly used against or for a hedge against inflation, or just like an uncorrelated asset to have in your portfolio.
Yeah, and I'm kind of surprised right now, Mike, that GLD and gold is honestly not higher than it is. Like the market's been kind of falling off since the beginning of the year. And at first, gold was really popping up as all that Russia news was making it push a lot higher. But now it's actually been kind of falling back off a little bit, believe it or not. And I'm hoping that it can start to rise back up as inflation is still pretty high. I'd like to see gold start to push higher. So definitely throw it on your radar for this week, guys. I know, Mike, we played metals a couple times last week and did pretty well with it.
Yep, there we go. All right, Tom, what else do we have for the news?
Yeah, so nothing too big, honestly, for the end of the week here, but I will say the S&P 500 heat map from last week was amazing, Mike. So, last week we pretty much went straight up all throughout the week. Like a lot of growth stocks just continued up. You can see on Friday, lots of stocks did amazing. Microsoft up 3.4%. Apple was up 2.4%. Even down here, a lot of these credit card companies, Visa and MasterCard, were up 4% both respectively, which is amazing. You can see all the banks were green. Verizon was green, believe it or red, actually. You can see there was only like a few red stocks on this whole map, Mike. I mean, it was an amazing end of the week there. You can see SPY was blasting up, ended up closing all the way up at 390. So heading into next week, we have had a lot of upwards momentum. I'm still going to look for the market to continue up. I think SPY might be able to come up and hit $400 this week. I really hope that we can. There's a lot of upwards momentum, and we're seeing lots of growth stocks starting to break out, whether it's DraftKings, Snowflake, Zoom, Unity, Matterport, even bigger stocks like Meta. Like look at Meta's Friday move. That was amazing, all the way back up to 171 now.
All right, there we go. Well, Tom, do we have any notable earnings for this week?
Yeah, there is a couple, actually. We talked about some of those bigger tech stocks, Mike, and Micron's gonna be reporting later in the week on Thursday, but it looks like on Monday we're gonna have Nike here after market close, so keep that in mind for tomorrow, guys. Nike will be pretty big. They've been a pretty big retailer over the past couple of years in general. Then as we go down the line here, we have Bed Bath & Beyond and General Mills, also McCormick, which is I think a pretty good dividend stock there. Ammo Incorporated will be pretty big there for some of those gun stocks. But my favorite one is definitely going to be Micron, Mike. And we also have Walgreens or WBA on Thursday as well. But my favorite personally is going to be Micron.
Speaking of those chip stocks like Micron, I know there was some kind of bad news with Intel lately, which the stock has been okay over the past couple of months. But what's going on with Intel?
Yeah, you can see on the yearly chart, it's been really falling off. But hey, I'm glad it's starting to come back up as of last week. But yeah, there was some pretty big news last week with Intel. So looking here at Intel, they're actually warning that their Ohio factory could be delayed because pretty much Congress is dragging their feet with funding, in their own words. So as we look at this, Congress, they passed the CHIPS Act last summer, but they're having trouble kind of figuring out the funding on this. So it was weird. Apparently they, like, two different chambers of Congress passed two different versions of this CHIPS Act. So they're trying to figure out exactly how much funding to give some companies like Intel. And Intel said right now that this is causing them obviously to have to delay this factory, and they're gonna possibly have some issues with this. Although they're still saying that they're fully committed to this. They invested $20 billion into this factory, and like I said, they still said that they are committed, which is good. But it does suck to see that, like it says here, the scope and pace of their expansion in Ohio will depend heavily on the funding from the CHIPS Act. So it's going to really depend on, I guess, how this funding ends up getting divvied out. And hopefully they can get a lot of that $52 billion that they were going to try to encourage semiconductor manufacturing to happen in the United States with. That's the main reason why the government was doing this, was to encourage us to try to differentiate from China. Obviously, we can start making our own chips, and Intel was trying to do so. So hopefully we get that funding sooner than later, Mike, because as of right now, the stock needs it. But I will say Friday was pretty good.
All righty, let's get right into the momentum plays for tomorrow. With the first one, we have BLNK to the downside.
Yeah, Blink unfortunately fell off a little bit here. Go ahead and make them break below 1770.
All right, with the next one, we have SWBI to the upside.
Yeah, this one's really popping. Go ahead and make them break above 1676. If they break that in pre-market, then look at $17.
All right, and then with the last one, we have Penn also to the upside.
Yeah, I'm really glad Penn's going up, Mike. I know Dave Portnoy is even going to be happy with this one, but go ahead and make them break above 32.25.
All righty, so we are watching Penn and Smith & Wesson for potential day trades to the upside tomorrow, only if they break above the level Tom listed. And then we are watching BLNK for a potential day trade to the downside tomorrow, only if it breaks below the level Tom listed. But I want to give a giant shout out to today's member of the day, Raphael I. Huge shout out to Raphael in the YouTube comments. Thank you so much for the support. And Tom, do you have any other, I guess you could say, stocks you're watching for this week? Any other important events with the calendar or anything like that?
Yeah, I'm just keeping my eyes on a lot of these big stocks in the market, Mike. I know Amazon had an amazing week last week. My main concern right now is we had such an explosive week last week. I feel like we might start to slow down a little bit, but there is a ton of momentum flowing in here. I just want to keep in the back of your mind, guys. We might see a bit of a pullback come in eventually. Like I said, I hope this momentum keeps up. And obviously, I think it can. I wasn't even expecting it to fly up as much as we did on Friday with a lot of stocks. But nonetheless, just always be careful. The market can always change. And we are starting to see, at least in my opinion, Mike, I'm starting to see a little bit more news with Russia. Now we're seeing this news with gold, obviously. So that's going to be pretty big for the metals market this week. But then in general, I've been hearing a little bit more news about Russia, starting to, pick up their invasion, starting to move more into cities and stuff. I don't know if maybe the media is going to start pushing that a little bit more now or what, but nonetheless, I've been seeing a bit of an uptick in that news, and it can always be a little bit scary. And, as we know, Mike, there's been a bunch of bad news lately with rates going up and inflation and everything like that. So I'm curious to see where the market heads, but, a lot of momentum last week, and I'm hoping that we can keep moving to the upside. There was very little stocks that fell on Friday. Only a couple were red. Like we said, Blink, ChargePoint, for some reason, some of those clean energy stocks were down a little bit, but they did end up recovering back up. But yeah, it's going to be a crazy week, Mike. Hopefully these retailers keep pushing us higher. I will say, I was glad to see Walmart and Costco helping us up.
Awesome. Tom, can you go back to FinViz for 1 second? So we can see how stocks did amazing on Friday. But Tom, towards the left-hand side of the screen where it says 1 day performance, check out, can you make that 1 week performance? Last week, stocks exploded up. I mean, Amazon up over 12%, Apple up 9%, Microsoft up 9%, and many other stocks popped up. The thing is now, kind of like Tom just said a couple minutes ago, is stocks have a lot of momentum right now, but again, Google was up 11% last week alone. That is a giant amount. So we're to the point where it's we want to play that upwards momentum, but you got to be careful because the pullback is probably coming soon. So I think the best strategy heading into this week is not to hold, especially calls overnight. Just shorter term trading would be ideal.
Yeah, I think that's a really good strategy for this week, Mike. And I hope viewers really take that into account, because it's going to be pretty hard, especially if you have closer expirations and you're holding some of these calls. It can definitely get bloody if we do end up turning around. So definitely be careful, like Mike said. Mike, it's kind of interesting to see how a lot of those oil stocks were actually down last week. Let's go actually check them out really quick. You can see ZOM was in the red by quite a bit. We had Oxy down a lot. Who knows, Mike? Maybe if the market starts to pull back, maybe some of these oil stocks might start to pop back up. Who knows? I know it's been pretty interesting to see them falling off, especially while the market was ripping.
You know it. So guys, let us know what stocks you're watching in the comments down below. There's a good chance we'll take a look at them in tomorrow's video. Besides that, thank you guys so much for watching, and let's have a great week.